And we're live. Welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us through yet another episode. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Daniel Humphreys, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I'm Dan Humphreys. Write sci-fi, write fantasy. And you cut out a little bit there. Or I had a blip. Um, yeah, do a little post-apocalyptic stuff. Do some urban fantasy stuff. Do some short stories here and there. So yeah, just kind of.
All right. And the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we met them. So picture this. It was All Hallows Eve in the year of our Lord, 1693. We were dodging a few hunters in Salem and almost got caught. So we had to hide out in a tavern. Turns out Daniel has an iron stomach and he drank everyone under the table, including the hunters. And that's how we got away. So beer saved the day. True story.
Beer, said the private.
Exactly. All right. So, Doc, before we go any further, we have to do the religion question and see if he gets to stick around.
Okay, I hope you're ready.
Drum roll.
Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Firefly.
No hesitation.
No hesitation.
Nice.
What is it about Firefly that you like?
Just the whole scrappy gang of people trying to make their way, against the larger world, and it's a little bit more realistic than in Star Wars and Star Trek, I guess.
So it's the everyman approach that you like so much, you think?
Yeah, it appeals to me.
Okay. All right, Doc.
Now for the fantasy. Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Conan the Barbarian?
Can you say that one more time for us, Doc? Just because I like that voice. Do it again. No?
Huh?
I was asking you could say that again because it was kind of amusing.
Conan the Barbarian?
No, the way you said it. But I'll just cut it out and post, and then I'll show everybody. We'll make it like a ringtone or something.
Yeah, loop that. It's close, but I got to go with Conan.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it close
with?
Is
it because he's the everyman also?
Nah.
Conan is the man we all wish we could be.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. I mean, there's certain aspects of it I like, but it's just so grim, and there's not really anybody to root for that lives. The Wheel of Time. I need to at some point. I think I got up to like book 7 or 8, and just kind of petered out and never.
You mean tome 7 or 8?
Well, yeah. So and just going back in, I mean, I hear it ends well. I just haven't had a chance to finish it, and Conan, the stories are great. I like the movies. I know they're not technically really accurate to the stories, but they're still good. I got a soft spot for Arnold. So yeah, gotta go with Conan.
Okay. Which one was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Probably fantasy, I guess. The first movie I ever remember seeing in the theater with my dad was Clash of the Titans when that came out, and that was just, I mean, there's just something about that, the stop motion, animatronic stuff, and little owl, and the Kraken and all that stuff. Just the remake was okay, but there's just something about the old one, that really I really liked. It's kind of foundational for me, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So was that was the Clash of the Titans your first memory of sci-fi or fantasy? Anything speculative fiction?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was like 4 when it came out, I think, maybe. So yeah, that was like, and I love to read, so like I was always the weird kid that had checked out like 20 or 30 books a time out of the library, and so I'd find anything interesting, sci-fi, fantasy, mysteries, whatever I could find, be into
So
that.
you were that kid who pushed the limit on how many you could have checked out at once.
Yeah, and I conned my mom into an adult library card, I think in third or fourth grade, and I got in trouble at school because I had it in my desk, and the teacher didn't think that was necessarily appropriate for a
Me
9-year-old,
too.
which it probably wasn't, but
That's exactly why
I
I
am
read it, because I
surprised
wanted
by
some
how
remote.
many 9-year-olds have had come on the show, or rather, adults have come on and said they had that book at 9. I am very
I'm
shocked and a little worried.
I would be more I mean, as a parent now, looking back, I mean, I'm a little horrified, but I also realized that looking back, I didn't get probably 75% of it. I didn't understand it. I mean, so it didn't really impact me, I don't think. I was just kind of in it for, oh, there's a clown, and there's like a lizard arm on the cover, and what's going on, and then oh wait, it's a spider, and they're spraying it with acid. I mean, all the subtext and depth and layers. Just totally went over my head, but yeah, that was definitely kind of a gateway drug for young me. So
Okay. So what is it about speculative fiction, that umbrella genre that includes all the cool things that Doc and I love? What is it about that you love so much?
I think just the escapism, instead of a world where you get up and go to work and pay bills, maybe there's a dragon that flies across the sky, or something different and interesting. Um, I think for me, stories and books and all that was always a way to kind of not have to pay attention to what was going on around me. So kind of appeals in that way.
Okay. So how did your love of speculative fiction as a genre go from, hey, I like reading and watching this content, to, let me create some of my own?
I have always. I mean, I drew comics in school. Like if we had an assignment to do a project, I'd say, "Oh, can I draw a comic book?" Or, "Oh, can I write a short story?" And I'd always try to do the wildest thing I could get away with. I mean, in high school, we read The Scarlet Letter, and I said, "Oh, hey, I want to write for my project. I want to write a short story," and it was about like cyborg war machines, that when they failed in the battlefield, they got stamped with the Scarlet Letter. So that was my tie-in there. And
Oh, I like that.
yeah. So it's kind of that was kind of my thing. Was basically I was leveraging all my classes for to try and do stuff that actually interested me, and not necessarily doing poetry analysis or discussing the themes of what we were actually reading. So.
That is insanely topical, because they just had the head of the English department at Harvard just said most incoming freshmen can't understand and read the language of the Scarlet Letter, and I'm like, didn't we read that in like 10th grade?
Yeah, something like that.
So it's interesting. I do think that could be an interesting book to rewrite, even with your current capabilities. I'd read the heck out of that. That sounds interesting. So do you have any?
Say again?
Do you have? I said, do you have any of your old stories?
Yes, I kept a lot of them. The weird thing is, a lot of the ones I still have are the really early ones, because they were like either written longhand or printed out. All the stuff that a lot of the stuff that I wrote in high school and afterward was on like a Commodore, so I don't have I don't even have the discs anymore. So, but yeah, I do. A lot of the stuff I've kept around, and it's kind of good to. I don't know that I ever put any of it out there without like some serious rewrites, but it's good to look at it and see where you've come from, because it's like, wow. Don't copy edit yourself after 20 years. It's painful.
Yeah, although some of your diehard fans might pay to read that. Do it a Patreon exclusive or something.
I did as it was half a joke and half serious. On my blog is a free book, and I want to say I was maybe 20 when I wrote it, so it's 25 years old. And I built it as the free awful novel. So it's up there on my blog, and you can read through that and shake your head at like I did as I was putting scanning it up there and putting it up. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. You find some nuggets in there, and it's like, I kind of like that idea. Maybe I should rewrite this. And I'm like, no, I've got all kinds of stuff I want to write. I don't want to come back to this. But it's fun because I mined characters and some ideas out of stuff. Over the years, you kind of copy off yourself and refine things. So it was kind of interesting doing that. So kind of like writing archaeology, I guess.
I like that. Doc, remember that. Write that down. Writing archaeology.
There you go.
I'm not your secretary, JR.
No, for you. It sounds cool. You could use that at your con thing where like the other 25 people at Dragon Con.
JR.
Oh, I'm sorry. 35. You've expanded. All right. So many authors will let their own real life experiences influence the stories they tell. So were there any formidable moments that you think shaped you as a storyteller?
I think a lot of my characters tend to have kind of rough childhoods, and I kind of mind my experience for that. But a lot of them also have people around them that are kind of like pseudo families, and I do kind of that a lot. So yeah, just the kid that was sitting in his bedroom, wishing he could, be riding with Conan, kind of extends out now, So.
Okay. Well, Doc, your fandom questions are up, and he gets to ask all of them because he's had an eventful con life. So go to town.
All right.
Con life should be eventful as long as it's positive. I am always happy to hear it's eventful. So, getting into some of your fan experiences, have you had any cool fan art or cosplay yet of one of your characters?
Nothing like I've run into anybody, but my son, and it was a pretty proud moment as a dad, going back to how I used to leverage my own interest to do my homework. He was taking a graphics design class, and they had to make a movie poster. So he made movie posters for a couple of my books for his finals. So that was neat. So his budget's a little higher, I think, than probably could work out. He had about 8 A-list actors on the cover on the posters. So it would have been a pricey movie. So yeah, that was kind of neat.
It totally counts too.
That is
even
awesome.
If you ride them with food.
So how was it the first time somebody asked you for an autograph?
It was like kind of a strange blend of completely normal and completely surreal, because it was somebody I knew, who was already a friend of mine, and we were at a volleyball game for my daughter. And they're like, "Hey, I want to get your book. Can you give me a copy and sign it?" And I'm like, it just kind of was strange because that was my first novel, which was like a post-apocalyptic zombie story, and I'm like, well, you're like you're a housewife that lives on a farm. You didn't really strike me as a person who liked zombies, but it was kind of cool, So it was like, yeah, it's like, oh, okay, yeah.
That was the first time you got asked to sign your book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was
awesome.
Yeah, right after it came out.
So other than that time, when was the first time you spotted somebody reading your book in the wild?
I haven't seen anyone reading one, maybe in like a con or something, after I've sold them one, but probably kind of the same. We were in a Half Price Books, and we were just looking and scanning the shelves, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's mine. And it was like, son of a gun. Yeah, so
I think that's awful.
Well, that's the thing. You know, I mean, on one hand, somebody bought my book and sold it. That kind of sucks. On the other hand, I'm like, well, it's kind of cool, still in the store, you know. Um, so I mean, you know, it's kind of like, you know, 50-50. You got to look at the bright side. But it was
Maybe
fun. I took it up the counter. I said, hey, this is me. You want me to sign it? And you guys can, you know, put it in your autograph section. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. So I signed it. And,
maybe they liked it so much they wanted to spread the love. So they took it to the bookstore so somebody else could enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm cool with that. You know, I mean, I like I said, I was a library brat growing up. So hey, you know, libraries, used bookstore, man, that's my jam. So I mean, you know, if you read a book and you want to sell it and somebody else can read it, that's cool, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, that's great. What has been your funniest fan interaction though?
Well, it's Twitter, so that, you know, that probably explains a lot right there. But so there's kind of like a, you know, there's a pretty big community and, you know, indie writers, so, you know, you get to know each other and, you know, you form relationships with people and you know, and you meet each other at cons and you go out and have drinks and stuff and get to know each other. So I'm you know, friends with John DeLaRose. So as a joke one time, I said, hey, John, can I redshirt you one of my books? And he's like, absolutely, let's do it. So I made him a character, and he dies absolutely horrifically. And so as a, you know, just, you know, I got a kick out of the writing the scene. So I, you know, shared a screenshot of the scene on Twitter and said, hey, check this out, this is great. Tagged John in it. He thought it was hilarious. Well, one of his fans did not realize that we knew each other. And this guy lost his mind. He thought I was, you know, well, why are you doing this? How do you, you know? And it's like, man, it's okay. We're friends. It's all right. You know, my friend Hans has killed me horribly in one of his books, and I killed him twice, I think, in one, you know, a couple in both my series. You know, so it's just, I don't know. It's kind of something we do to each other, and I don't know that if people don't get it or they think we're, you know, if you.
Well, JR is aiming to be the next Joe Buckley.
Okay. Well, then you, yeah. I didn't know if the Buckley thing is like, you know, famous. It's kind of, you know, shades of that, you know. So
I know, but Terry Mixon's killed him pretty effectively a couple of times already. So he's working on it.
Yeah, there you go.
Feel free to kill my friend.
One of the times he killed me, it was a hormonal first puberty situation with a young girl who stabbed me with a garden implement.
Nice.
Should have brought the Midol, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always fun when you get to involve your friends. Although I think there's a danger in doing it where it starts to get too inside baseball, too tongue in cheek, and you can lose readers. But I think if you do it right and you do it skillfully, it could be fun to throw some friends in there.
And I like to say that I'm probably one of the worst writers of red shirts there are. I'm like batting maybe 500. I have had red shirt calls, and then when I relaunched one of my series, I did a Kickstarter and sold red shirt slots, and I'm just terrible at killing them. I mean, they turn into like supporting characters and they stick around, and it's like, man, I can't off this guy. I like writing this character, you know, and so they kind of take on a life of their own, you know. My buddy Jared, I think he popped up in book 2 of Paxton Locke, and he was supposed to die, and he's still, and like in book 6, he's like a regional supervisor now. So it's like, Jared, what am I doing? You're supposed to be dead already. So yeah.
Before we transition more to talking about the book that we brought you here for, and the commercial we're about to air, that you brought that up, that you have your stories tend to take a life of their own when you add friends and family and red-shirted fans and stuff. So would it be fair to assume then that you're a pantser more than a plotter?
Half and half. I mean, I know where point A and point Z and maybe 1 or 2 points in the middle are, but yeah, I kind of do Billy from the Family Circle through the plot to get there. So yeah, I kind of pants it. Yeah. So.
Okay, that works. All right, so this is the part where we talk about the Reader's Digest of your body of work. So can you give the readers sort of what they can expect from the one, the only, the great Pimp Daddy, Daniel Humphreys?
So let's see. I started out with my Z-Day series, kind of my epic post-apocalyptic zombie thing. I wrote that as a standalone novel just to get it out of my head so I could work on something else, which in this case was the Paxton Locke series. I got it written. I wrote Paxton Locke 1, and I had to write another zombie book. I'm like, okay, this is it. I can do more Paxton books. I did Paxton 2, and I'm like, crap, I got to do another zombie book. So at this point, I'm on 3 zombie books, and thankfully I have kind of forced myself to stick with Paxton. We're up to 6 on Paxton. I did a short story collection of the Z-Day series, so there's 4 in that total. And the bad part about that is the story that I thought was done, except for the anthology. I wrote 2 short stories for the anthology, and now it's like, well, crap, I got another book in there. So it like a literal zombie, it won't die.
Everyone asks, like, where do you get your ideas for your stories? And I'm like, how do you make them stop? I've got way more ideas than I have lives to write them in.
Yes, absolutely. It's like the Twilight Zone episode with Burgess Meredith, where he's in the library after the end of the world. You know, it's like I don't want to necessarily have time to read. I want time to write.
Yeah. That's the running joke is, do you go to the home goods store so you have all the food and the survival supplies, or the bookstore because you can read? I don't know. I mean, if I'm going to die inevitably anyway, I think I might go for the books.
Yeah, right.
Or split the difference.
Amazon Warehouse.
And go to one that has, go to a bookstore like one of the big Barnes and Nobles that has food in it. Then you get the supplies and you get the books and the knowledge to do stuff.
That works. So, Doc, this is an important question for you before we move on to the commercial, right? So, normally I would say, this is an important question. You got to pay attention, Doc. There will be a test. So, normally we would say shamelessly shill for the man or the woman, depending on the author.
No!
But the author is a man, but it's a Bane book. So, it's run by the great and mighty Tony Weisskopf. So, are we shilling for Tony, or are we shilling for the author, or the man or the woman?
I think you're shilling for, I don't know, just roll the bean footage.
All right, we'll just play the commercial and pretend like I had a great and mighty introduction, and in the meantime, you can see this epic commercial Bane put together for us.
A newly minted PhD, Noah Parker is thrilled to land a dream job at the hottest tech company in the American Southwest, genetically engineering new lines for their feature product, Living Breathing Dragons. Desperate to create the perfect family pet, Reptilian Corp hopes to put a dragon in every home. But with his newfound access to the company's resources, Noah has a secret goal: modify the dragon's genetic code, bending them to another purpose entirely. Domesticating Dragons by Dan Cobalt and BaneBooks.com.
That is a very fast-talking narrator. I promise I did not speed that up in post. But anyway, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude.
I'm sold.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I want a dragon. But if I get a dragon, then my life becomes a fantasy novel, because everybody knows, Doc, that a dragon makes it a fantasy.
No, it doesn't.
No? Okay.
No, it doesn't.
So
it all depends on the mechanics.
Rain of Fire.
All right. So let's talk about The Fade, which is the first book in the Paxton Locke series, which is what brought us here. So where did you come up with the idea for this universe? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, overindulgent, tired candy? Like, where did it come from?
Pizza Nightmare.
That works.
So I kind of like, I guess being a pantser, I kind of backed into it. I had an idea for an alternate history story about Tombstone, and one of my favorite movies, right back there. And basically, what it was instead of an enemy gang, it was going to be vampires of some sort. And so it was going to be Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo against vampires. Didn't obviously I've written maybe a couple chapters of that. Haven't finished it yet, but a character came out of that runs through the Paxton Locke universe, and so basically I just kind of from there it just kind of built, and I brought in the main character, who's a mid-20s guy. He's just kind of a roaming vagabond, but he's a wizard. So he goes around and helps people with magical problems, whether it be ghosts or monsters or whatever he runs into. But then he finds out that there's a little bit more to the world behind the scenes than he thought, and kind of transitions from being an independent guy into being more of like a government agent, and just kind of goes from there. So.
Okay. So before we get started diving into the book itself, what is the age range for the story? Like if you were rating it, because we have some families that listen and that read together. So we like to ask them up front, kind of what's appropriate for this particular book.
It's definitely not young adult. I don't go crazy on the language, but it's pretty gory at times, because you're dealing with, you got to make the bad guys bad. I would say, my teenage sons read it, and I would say, that teenage and up. Yeah.
So if you were going to call it PG-13, maybe?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. All right, Doc, now it's your turn.
My turn? Yeah, it is my turn. So can we talk about this wonderful cover? I actually really love the colors that you did.
That's actually
that's
actually the alternate too. I like that one, but that's not the one I ended up going with. Yeah.
It's not.
No, yeah.
I wasn't sure. I should have asked in the beginning. I just like that one.
Yeah. No, it was a tough call. I really liked the first one, but I think having the RV kind of kind of ties everything in a little bit, because that's Paxton's RV that he drives around in. The tagline when Silver Empire picked it up was Dresden goes on a supernatural style road trip, cool car not included, because he's driving a junky RV. So
I like the last part. Cool part, car not included. It lets you know that there is some humor.
He's the oldest 20-year-old in the world. He drives around in his RV and he stays at RV parks and sleeps in Walmart parking lots. And, he doesn't have a very glamorous lifestyle to begin in the series.
It almost seems like, given my exposure to zombies, which isn't great, but it almost seems like there's a subset that RV is sort of part of. Like The Walking Dead had the RV for a while, for instance, right. and I've seen it in other ones where they, I guess it makes sense if you've got to be mobile, a mobile home that you can drive, makes sense. But do you think it occurs often enough that you could consider it a zombie trope?
Yeah, I suppose you could. It's funny. In a way, it's kind of an obstacle in terms of writing. Because it's like, okay, he's in this RV. How's he going to go to this haunted house in the woods? Well, he's not. You got to figure out something else. So, fairly soon on, I'm like, okay, he can't just, this is going to be more like a base camp. He's got a dirt bike that he deploys, that he rides everywhere. Then you just go from there. It's not as bad as like, I've tried to write characters that have like had dogs before, and that's just exhausting. I don't know. Just because it's like, okay, you can't forget what the dog's doing. What's the dog doing now? It's just, so it's kind of like, oh, where's the RV? Is there anybody bothering the RV? Are things okay in the RV? So
that is fair. So, what is the 30-second elevator pitch though for this book? Because you said the RV plays a part in it.
Right. So my pitch when I first started writing it was Burn Notice meets Evil Dead. So basically, Paxton has a in the beginning of the first book, he has a Craigslist ad, and basically saying, "Hey, you got weird problems that nobody else believes. I can help you." You know, so he's going around and helping people. What he does try to do, though, because he has a pretty overdeveloped sense of guilt. Obviously, if you're going to market yourself like that, you're going to get your share of crazies. So what he does is, if it's somebody that has a genuine problem, he gives them freebies. But then, you know, if he calls somebody that, you know, has a couple screws loose, he actually charges them. So that's kind of his way of justifying, you know, what he's doing. You know, charging money for helping people out. You know, keep himself in pizza and Pop-Tarts, you know, that kind of thing. So
Makes sense.
yeah,
Pizza and Pop-Tarts are important.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure. I was never really a big Pop-Tart person, so I'll go with it. But what is it that makes this series special and unique? Because I mean, there's a lot of zombie books.
Mm-hmm. This is more urban fantasy. I think what I tried to do was the shows. I love the show Supernatural. And there's definitely some inspirations there. I really liked the IMAX.
He has a lot more cargo space than the Winchesters.
Yeah, not as cool, but yeah, it definitely has more cargo room. But I think the thing about,
you know what's cool? Having enough ammo.
That's true. Yeah. But he's a terrible shot, or at least he starts out a terrible shot. So that's why he likes shotguns, because you don't have to be quite as accurate. So I think the thing about that I wanted to kind of spin off, you know, and not be, you know, just another Supernatural clone, was I wanted to have a world where if there were, you know, if there were Sasquatches roaming the national parks, to kind of, you know, circle back to where we were a little bit ago, you know, the government's got to do something about that. Then now the question is are they going to do that competently or correctly? That may be up in the air, but they're not just going to let, you know, Sasquatch eat campers. They're going to, you know, there's going to be a response somewhere. So one of the underlying themes is that at first Paxton doesn't realize that there is an entire branch of the government that is basically the, you know, FBI that is in charge of looking after cryptids and ghosts and witches and, you know, that sort of thing. So he kind of runs afoul of them, and then eventually ends up working with them, you know, once, you know, they realize that he's not, you know, as bad as they thought he was initially, that sort of thing. So I kind of wanted to make, I think that makes it feel more real. There was always like a sense of, you know, disbelief that, like, you know, oh, they go to all these little bitty towns in the Midwest, and, you know, there's never any, you know, blog or anything saying, oh, it's these guys again, you know, we've seen these guys before, you know. I mean, they kind of had that element a little bit in like the bank. There's one season where they were in a bank robbery with a shapeshifter, and I think the FBI got involved, but I felt like they kind of abandoned that, and I just kind of wanted to, you know, have something where, you know, it seemed like it was a bigger world and not just focused on, you know, a couple people. So.
Okay. So which tropes do you feel like, and then we mentioned some of them earlier, but which tropes do you think fade, which is obviously the first book, and the Paxton Locke series? I like the name Paxton, by the way. It's a very dignified name, Paxton Locke. But what tropes do you feel like fade hits best?
So Paxton's pretty much just, he's kind of the everyman. So in a way, he's sort of the audience analog. You know, it's like he does have, you know, powers, but he's kind of a screw up. You know, he gets beat up a lot by the monsters and the bad guys, but he kind of, you know, forces his way to, you know, through it just because of, you know, the sheer determination. He had kind of a raw deal in life, and he's trying to make something of himself, and you know, I think that's what we all should strive for, I guess. So.
accidentally muted myself. I'm going to blame Doc. I don't know why, but it's her fault. So, what subgenres or genres besides just obvious the zombies do you feel like Fade fits into?
Still the urban fantasy, horror. There's a bit of, I guess, there's a bit of espionage thriller type stuff in there. Because when you eventually, later on, when Paxton's working with the U.S. government, there's some times where they have to work with other basically entities that defend other countries. The British and the American anti-magic agencies don't necessarily get along, and nobody likes the Russian guys. They're literally called the Death Knights, and so that's been fun. Kind of doing a little bit of not just sticking to the United States and moving around a little bit.
So Doc always, when she makes fun of me, says she's going to mail me a pineapple pizza. So, and you mentioned Pop-Tarts and pizza earlier, so I have two questions for you. One, what is your personal feeling about pineapples and pizza?
My mother-in-law loves Hawaiian, and it's like, I'll eat it if that's all there is, but it's not my number one choice. I'm definitely a more meat the better kind of guy, and fruit doesn't belong on pizza.
I could dig it. So the next question, which is more important for this interview, Paxton Locke, since he eats pizza, how would he take his pizza?
Oh, he's a pepperoni guy all the way, yeah. And Pop-Tarts, he's a brown sugar cinnamon guy. I've had that a couple times.
Excellent taste.
Yeah. Well, so it kind of it's plot related because you don't want to have a character that's too overpowered. So the way the magic works in the Paxton universe is that he's basically drawing on his own energy. So if he casts too powerful a spell, he's tired, he's hungry, So Pop-Tarts, man, you got to recharge. So. And then whereas the bad guys, they have other sources of power, so they can be a little bit more ostentatious. Paxton has to be a little bit more careful about how he uses magic and try and be sneaky with it versus throwing balls of fire at people. So.
Okay. So in this world, you mentioned you have magic. Is it out in like everyone knows magic is real, or is it hidden?
It's definitely hidden. Like literally, there is a division of the government called Division M. And basically, their job is to make sure that it doesn't get out. So, they go around and arrest covens of sorority girls that are trying to cast curses on their friends, and basically all sorts of different things like that. So the antagonists in Fate are actually are some sorority girls that have got hold of a spell book. So. It's basically Mean Girls with magic. So.
Okay. So you told us a little bit about Paxton already. Was there anything else that makes him unique in the crowded world of urban fantasies?
He's like I said. I try to balance his power levels. You talk about going back to Wheel of Time. Even by halfway through the series, Rand was basically super saiyan. I try to keep it. He may learn one spell, a new spell, a book. And he's not throwing fireballs around. He does get hurt. He's not invincible. And I think that's what makes him most appealing as a character is that he's literally throwing himself into the fight. He's not like your stereotypical magic user that's kind of hiding back and not getting involved. He's getting up close and personal, and
Okay, that's a solid answer. All right, Doc.
How about the main characters? Is the RV a character in the book?
No, it's more of a setting, I guess.
So
I don't have a sentient. That's a good idea, though. Yeah, kind of like Bob the Skull. You have have Tom the RV or something. No. Yeah, he's gone through a couple RVs at this point. The first one gets torched, and then he buys a new one, and somebody throws a familiar through the other one, and yeah, he's not had very good luck with them.
But he's got to be having a lot of money because those things aren't cheap. I've priced them.
Well, yeah, hey, usually, thankfully, he gets the rich people that are crazy and think they need their house cleansed, so he can charge them pretty well. So.
Doc, we went into the wrong business. Apparently, we need to start our own exorcism company.
Yes, yeah, hey, So,
that's what happens when you clean.
Yeah. So, and it's funny, the actual formation of Paxton as a character, I had the hook for me in my head was, a guy goes to exorcise some spirits, and when he gets into the guy's house, he realizes A, it really is haunted, and B, the reason why it's haunted is because the guy's a serial killer. So that was kind of where Paxton started out as a character on his thing, and getting make some references to that in Fade, but there's an actual short story we put out in an anthology called Shoot the Devil, and that's the story of Paxton's basically his start, where he meets a serial killer and all the ghosts that live in the guy's house.
Wow. Yeah. So does he have an entirely new cast of characters every novel? Like, do you
no, I mean, the cast is kind of slowly growing with each book. By the end of the first book, he's got a partner that he's working with that turns into a girlfriend. Eventually, when he joins the government, he's on a team. So there's some characters there that he's with. So yeah, and then as he's traveling around, he meets other people and expands his.
So, is there a one big bad for the series, or is it just like a different one in each book?
It's more of an arc. The first 3 books, the primary antagonist is Paxton's mom. She was a college professor that got hold of some magical artifacts and tried to use them for bad things, and bad things happened, and Pax is the one that has to stop her. And then the next arc is a British wizard that he has to fight named Alistair Knight. There's kind of a ongoing opponent that is kind of building up to basically be the third major antagonist. So the structure is there's the overarching opponent, and then there's there's usually a separate one. So like in Fade, you've got the sorority girls, but then his mom also is in it, and then his mom carries on to the second book, but then they're working against a monster in Phoenix, and then kind of goes from there. So it kind of does have a monster of the week feel, but there's also usually a bigger bad that's either behind it.
There's some consistency, overarching consistency.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and I kind of like that because it feels the victory feels more earned. He finally beats his mom in the third book, and it feels more, it's not like he just did it. He had to fight for it.
So given all of this, if your character knew who you were and met you in a dark alley, how do you think you'd fare?
Oh, he'd be fine. Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Not him, you.
Oh, me. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. He's pretty nondescript. I mean, he literally, it says in the book that he's just an average looking guy. He's got white hair that kind of came about, because something that happened to him. Basically, his hair turned white out of fear. I've avoided making any jokes about The Witcher, but he keeps it cut short, and he does try to dye it because obviously when he's on the run, that's kind of a obvious characteristic. But yeah, he's just you wouldn't. I mean, unless he's actually in the middle of fighting something, you wouldn't think much of him. And I think that's what's appealing about him is just a guy. So
that's a very appealing thing for people. So when you write these characters, do you have a favorite character archetype that you use, or do you just sort of let the plot requirement dictate?
To some extent, I mean, Paxton's more of a optimistic person, and then one of his guys that he works with is more of a Malcolm Reynolds type, where he's going to do what he thinks needs to be done, and he doesn't care who, what government or person tells him, to do different. So I don't know. One thing I try to do is I like characters that have well identified motivations. I want even the bad guys. I don't want anyone to be twirling their mustache. I want you to look at this character and say, okay, they want this, and I want it to be something that you can understand. Paxton's mom, kind of, if you really sit and think about what she's trying to do when she actually explains it, crappy way going about it, but there's maybe some good ideas there. She did, the implementation was awful, and she's a terrible person, but you could see where somebody would come to that. The Alistair Knight in the next arc, he's really old. He doesn't want to die, and I think that's understandable. I mean, he does.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off because we don't want you to just. Spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. Yeah. So.
All right, so we can avoid spoilers because it's easy for authors to get caught up in the discussions, because I do it too, right? Doc has to shut us up all the time. You're not the first and you won't be the last. But give us a sneak peek at how the sausage was made. So were there any cool scenes in book one that you had to cut that maybe you were able to use in other places?
Book one, not so much. Definitely, as the story expanded further on, there were big, climactic moments, and in my head I'm thinking, this is, if they do this, and have these people with them, that would be really cool. But then, looking at it, it's like, well, do I really want to have this massive battle scene with all these people when I've already said that this person couldn't be stopped? Doesn't it make more sense to have it be a lot more personal? So instead of having some giant Avengers Age of Ultron fight, it's just one or two guys. It makes it it's more intimate. So yeah, avoid with the spoiler warning, it's kind of hard to go into more detail with that. But I had this big outlandish production in mind, and it just looking at it, I'm like, man, yeah, it's cool, but it doesn't really speak to the conflict. Why is Paxton, why does he feel he has to stop this guy? Because it's not just because he's a bad guy. There's definitely a reason, and it's consumed him literally across more than one book. So I think the payoff is more fulfilling if it's more face to face. So
okay.
I think and it's hard because as a writer, you love I wouldn't say you love every scene you write, but you have your favorites, and there's times you come up with a concept or a scene, and it's like, oh, that's awesome. I want to see that on a movie, or I want to see that in my head, and then you're like, yeah, it doesn't work for the story, and you gotta. You don't want, the last thing you want to do, is you don't want to throw somebody out of the story, and you gotta. And that's a hard thing, is being honest with yourself and saying, okay, it's cool, but it doesn't work.
Okay, so we know that this is part of a series because you mentioned it. It's the Paxton Locke series. This is book one of what Amazon says are 6. But where is the series going, do you think? Where do you see it ending?
I have no endpoint in mind. I've currently got up to book 9 sketched out, so I have a definite plan as to where things are going, and we'll just have to see from there. I think I don't know. There's it. You want there to be an end, but then you want it to feel organic with the story, and I don't necessarily want to just end it, but I don't know. Up right now I'm at 9, and we'll see what happens after that.
So you mentioned some of the magic, but could you elaborate what kind of magic we can expect from this book?
Yeah. So basically, the magical system is, I guess you could call it magical thermodynamics.
Okay.
If Paxton, there's a scene in Fade where he really, really overdoes his powers, and he actually, emaciates himself. He loses like 20 pounds because he's basically burned all that into calories, and so that's kind of a handicap for the good guys, because the bad guys are able to do something that's called tapping, and basically they're going and pulling out evil from the universe and using that to fuel their spells. So I think that kind of is a check on the tendency to make your character unstoppable. But it also, in a way, for writing it, it's been fun because it makes you have to think of ways that he can use his spells to in more creative ways that are less energy intensive. So he doesn't throw fireballs, but he learns how to make ice, and the way he makes ice is he draws heat energy from the air around him. So he realizes over the course of the books that, well, hey, I'm stuck in the desert. That's no big deal. I can just draw on this heat around me, and I can cool myself off. I can make ice. Have to have a cool drink. His one of his first spells he learns is telekinesis, and I tried, and basically with the physics of that, the further away he is, the less weight he can move. So basically, it's pretty much a worthless spell. I mean, he can grab a can of pop out of a fridge that's about 10 feet away or something like that. But he realizes that he can make knives out of a field, and a knife doesn't use any energy to cut. It's just however many molecules the actual blade of force is. So he has magic swords that way, sort of thing. So coming up with little twists on the magic he has to be a little bit more creative and work with things. He's not just calling down lightning bolts and fireballs and stuff like that, like you'd see in Dungeons and Dragons or something like that.
Okay. So you've mentioned already that you have some sort of fantastical creatures in it that he's engaging in combat with.
Sure.
So how do you go about creating these? Do you let your nightmares inspire you? Do you pull from myth and lore, legends? Like, do you make it up completely out of whole cloth in your imagination? How do you create the beings that he's engaging with?
I try to find stuff in folklore that is actually real, but I try to find stuff also that maybe I haven't seen. So I don't have vampires, and I don't have werewolves. One of the monsters he runs into is a oh gosh, I forget what it's called. Is a urban legend called the Kentucky Howler. And basically, it's like a in the book I describe him as like a cross between a tiger and a bear. So it's like a bear tiger with horns, and it like teleports and pops out of the ground and stuff like that. So just trying to find unique things. I'll sit on Wikipedia or just Google urban legends and look for things that it looks kind of cool, so.
Okay, that's a good way to do it. So clearly this interview is winding down, but before we let you go, was there anything about Fade, which is the first book in the Paxton Locke series, that we didn't ask that you wanted to tell us before we wrap it up?
No, not really. I think we covered it pretty well. So.
All right. Well, it's that time of the evening. Well, I guess we don't know if it's evening when they're listening, but it's that time of the show, dear listener, dear viewer, where we remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, so do your part. And maybe, just maybe, if you give him his 100th review, Paxton will finally get to upgrade his RV to the king-sized RV, and he could actually have like a full fridge or something. I don't know RV terms. I've got to work on that for the next.
Maybe a chauffeur or something, so you can.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so do your part, people. It really does make a difference. And on that note, Daniel Humphreys, which is where you can find look him up as. But Daniel, can you tell us how they can find you on the Wild interwebs?
Yeah, so you can find me on my blog, danielhumphreys.com. That'll redirect you to the right spot. There should be links to all my stuff. Fade is, and the entire Packs and Lock series is paperback, hardback, Kindle, and books 1 through 4 are also available on audio. 5 and 6 should be coming out in audio, hopefully by the summertime. Just kind of waiting on the narrator there. Same goes for the Z-Day books. Those are all available paperback only in Kindle, and first 3 books of that are in audio as well. So.
All right. Well, you can find all of that will be in the show notes as usual, dear listener. You know the spell. Scroll down on the wherever you're viewing or listening, and you can get all of the links. You can find us on the Twitters at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. We do have a Facebook page. We do not have enough followers yet to have a dedicated URL, so help us fix that, people. But in the meantime, if you look up Blasters and Blades Podcast, you will find us as our page as well. We try to list a bunch of book reviews and all of our episodes, so it's worth following. We have a website over at anchor.fm/blasters tag blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. See, this show isn't free, and our host providers kind of like to get paid too. You can also support us more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I will keep the sleepy Doc, Cisca, duly caffeinated. Her and Nick will drink the coffee until their liver surrenders.
Never surrender.
You ain't no quitter, right? Your mama didn't raise a quitter. I know. All right, Doc, bring us home.
Okay, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the absentee Nick Garter, the idle brain JR, and the very sleepy me, this has been the Blasters and Blades podcast. Go find a new book. Tell us what you think of Fade when you read it. We would love to know. We'll be back next time, same place, same time, doing who knows what, because that predictability would be boring. Bye.
Yeah, predictability is boring. All right. You guys have a nice evening. Thank you for coming and visiting us, Daniel.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.